the flexibility to actually fill the seat at the next board meeting. That's why we suggested 25 instead of 30 days, because we didn't want it to be like February, where like, well, it's only technically been 29 days and have to wait another month.
Right.
That was the original logic behind 25. And so we would still have to amend our item H to reflect appropriately the language we would be amending in item B. So, as an example, we could say, a vacancy may be filled by any at-large candidate if the board fails to fill that seat with an eligible stakeholder within 25 days. And then, at the bottom, it says, the vacancy is to be filled according to provision B above. With an at-large stakeholder, we have to do an extra 30 days of outreach. So, it doesn't change the 30 days. You still have 55 days of outreach. It just gives you the opportunity to fill it with anyone.
Right.
After the
First
25.
25 is where we, as it stated, then we announced as that at large and then the next 30. So yeah, that
Correct.
makes perfect sense.
I'm still not crazy about the 20. I understand what you're saying, but it should be meeting to meeting. It shouldn't expire right before a meeting, because then you can,
So next,
Do you know what I'm
we use
saying?
the term next regularly.
at the next regularly, beginning of the next regularly scheduled meeting.
That is, yeah, that is the term that I would use.
Otherwise, it's going to expire.
We can't do it in a special meeting.
I don't know.
Here. I think that the next regular schedule is fair, so.
Well, you specify, he's mentioning that
Sure.
the next regular meeting is 3 months from today,
Well,
so.
they're supposed to be every month. So they're supposed to be the second Monday. Well, regularly scheduled is that monthly meeting. We're supposed to have a monthly meeting scheduled the second Monday of every month. That's ideally what we're set.
Sounds good to me, as long as it's clear.
Okay. What's going on? It does sound exciting. I'll leave the,
All right,
Yes.
so I think the term regularly scheduled meeting is what to go with first for the first section and then the second as well.
Okay, so I'm not going to change item H then. All I'm going to change is item B, and it will say if the board, a vacancy may be filled by any at-large candidate if the board fails to fill the seat with a stakeholder who meets the criteria at the next regularly scheduled board meeting.
Yes.
It should say, when it started again, it should be filled for the remainder of the current term.
It's fine.
Well, or else what you're saying is it could be ongoing. You want to make sure it reverts back
I
as
think,
of your next
yeah, I
election.
think he's right about that. It has to be set up.
Well, the way that I have it structured, it doesn't ever change. If the person who's filling that seat then decides to resign, then it goes back to the original seat at that time, and it has to go through that same 55-day process.
But if he runs, he has to run as a representative of that district, so that if the term, when it starts again, he's running as that district.
Right.
Yeah, that's F, what you're talking about is on F, we have to.
Does everybody understand the discussion?
Oh, you're right.
Yeah.
You're right.
The way that I'm proposing the language is right.
Okay.
Okay.
You're covered.
Yeah, so a vacancy may be filled by any at-large candidate if the board fails to fill the seat with a stakeholder who meets the criteria at the next regularly scheduled board meeting.
Yes. Is that all the language?
Yep.
Okay, do I have a motion?
No, we're making a motion at the end.
Okay. We're not, can we agree to section?
That's it. Yeah, I'd suggest you make motions to amend now, and then at the very end, you have one motion, which is the whole document as amended.
Yeah, that's, I feel better.
Okay. So Gerard, do you want
Check
to,
off that.
you got that?
Who made, where?
I did not get that.
Okay.
and I think
So
it was-
should we actually go back to items 1, 2, 3, and 4?
No, you didn't change it.
What about terrible changes, or is the?
No, don't worry about
Okay,
Those aren't the.
fair enough. So then, we're amending Article 5, Section 6, letter B, last sentence. It will read, the whole entire last sentence will read, during the meeting, the committee shall ensure that the applicant meets the criteria for the vacant seat. Semicolon. A vacancy may be filled by any at-large candidate if the board fails to fill the seat.
Sorry, hold on.
Oh.
Sorry, can be filled by?
A vacancy may be filled by any at-large candidate
Okay.
if the board fails to fill the seat with a stakeholder who meets the criteria at the next regularly scheduled board meeting.
Let's do this a little bit differently.
Excuse me?
Let's do this a little differently because I'm having a little hard time grabbing on that.
Okay. I wrote it all down.
I guess let's write it down. Let's go ahead and we'll work together later.
So why don't you state it?
Why don't you state it, the motion, and then
That's the
vote.
language that
Right.
we're voting on, it will be entered.
Okay,
Are you okay with that?
that's fine.
Okay.
Okay, so I need someone to make the following motion.
I make the motion, is there a second? A second.
Okay.
Sorry.
Great, all in favor? Aye.
So Bill and Don, okay.
Okay, are you ready? Are there any no's?
Yes.
Are there, no, we're doing each section and one at the end for all.
Was it in,
So one no for Jose, any other no's? Are there,
Abstain.
one abstain, do we have any other abstains? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
So one abstain, one no. I'm sorry? Okay. Are you okay to do it?
There was no other, changes to that section. I did notice one more spelling error that I have in there, and I'm gonna go back through these once more because I believe there's a couple others that I missed before also.
Yeah, I think those are fine because they don't affect content of the meeting.
Okay. Okay, so then under Article 5, that was the only section. Section 7 that you see, that red line was previously approved by the board.
Okay?
Okay. Article 6, which is officers. The language that you see was previously approved by the board. However, we have some additional suggestions. Chairperson, which is under section 2, letter A, and then bullet point number 2 under that section, we're recommending adding the language setting the agenda for the board meeting, just to make it clear that they're not setting the agenda for the committee meeting.
Yeah, that's specific enough to be fine.
We also are recommending, per Ivan's suggestion, to make the the chairperson the official spokesperson for the council, or to delegate the authority to someone else. We're also making the suggestion, per Ivan, that the chairperson should be the ex-officio member of all committees.
It should be an ex officio member of all committees. It means that,
They don't count toward quorum, or they don't count towards your minimum of 3, maximum of
Right.
5, but if the chairperson comes, they're able to vote and whatnot on matters.
they become, by virtue of the office of chairperson, they're a member of every committee, but they don't count in the quorum.
Okay,
And part of that is any meeting you want to go to and participate in, you should have, as president, you should have the right to. They
Without
can't keep you out of a meeting.
without affecting quorum.
You can't fill in for the quorum.
Right, and
Okay?
I don't, at the same level, we're not interrupting by having more members on the committee from the board than.
Well, all right, so if you have that problem where you're having too many, by you being there, you're gonna have too many board members,
Yes,
the solution is to post it as a joint meeting,
yes, that's
the
what we're.
board and the committee.
That's it.
So if you intend to go, you better let the chair know that,
So that it's a joint.
so that they post it as a joint meeting. It doesn't mean the whole board has to show.
Yeah, it
It's
just
just
means that it
letting
counts
your
more.
stakeholders know that more than the minimum number of allowed board members might be.
Yeah.
And then you can vote at that meeting? Well,
The
yeah.
president or the chairperson, as ex officio, can make motions and vote. All right? If you show up, you can participate,
But you can't.
You know, but you can't vote or make motions. You can participate as a stakeholder.
Yeah, and join, you can participate.
But you still need to post it as a joint meeting.
Yeah.
So like, if you go, you're gonna have a lot of board members show up in a meeting. It's just, all it means is say joint act.
We have a whole section on what you're talking about right now, coming up in a couple of
Perfect, okay.
Okay, so,
What
no,
will be the purpose for to make a joint hearing?
We're gonna get to that in a couple of minutes. There's a specific bullet point with a lot of recommended changes that we're going to discuss in maybe 5 bullet points, so let's discuss it when we get there.
okay, let's finish.
Does
this
anyone
first.
have any, those are the only suggestions of your chairperson. Does anyone have any comments, objections, suggestions? Do we want to make a motion about specifically the chairperson, or do we want to go over all 4
Let's
positions?
go all over
Let's go over
that
all.
section 2. We'll
Okay.
make a motion.
Okay, secondly, the vice chairperson, we are recommending, oh jeez, you're gonna have to help me out here, Ivan. 'cause I
Yeah,
don't know
no,
all
there's
this
some other
stuff.
things that should be there.
Go ahead.
All right, I'm gonna give this to you real quickly. One of the big mistakes people make in bylaws is they have a vice president whose only job is to sit there and wait for the president to croak. All right, I mean, what a waste of somebody who ran for an executive office and really wants to be doing something. So I recommend 2 things. One is you give your vice chairperson a specific job to do, such as chairing the committee. Give them a specific.
Supervising, I think.
Well, there's 2. That one is give them a committee to chair. There's no reason they shouldn't be able to, whatever one you want to. I suggest it should be the rules committee, but that would get her in trouble, so we decided not to do that.
As
But-
a bylaws committee, we suggested their choice, and I think.
It could be their choice, but it should say, shall chair one, one committee, okay? The second thing is, the vice president should oversee all of the board committees. So it's a function people don't do, but somebody should be making sure your committees are meeting, they're posting their agendas, it's not a lot of work, you just get a spreadsheet, you list your committees, and you check off once a month, you should be hearing from them, the vice president, okay? Just to make, and if there's a problem, then you can start making phone calls, okay? So those are the 2 big things. There's actually a third thing, which I don't think they have covered in here. The president is like being the chair, being the spokesperson, gets to speak at public events and all that other stuff. The vice president should be the liaison to other neighborhood council organizations, so that all isn't in one place. So you don't have a regional alliance here yet, but eventually it's going to come. So the vice president would be unless you delegate it somewhere else, it would be that the vice president would be the official representative to Lank, for example. Okay? So there's somebody filling that position. And then you come and report back at every meeting, this is what's going on. This is so much going on that you probably don't know about. You're like
As a bylaws committee, we also suggested adjusting number 3 to monitor the time during the meeting or delegate. As in, the chair is responsible for keeping the meeting on time and making things move, but the vice chair is responsible for setting the timer and making sure it continues to get reset or delegating it to someone else for that meeting.
Right. Remember that every job can be delegated. Okay.
So, based on Ivan's suggestions, we as a bylaws committee agreed with all of them and thought that they should be added to the vice chair's duties. Does anyone have any comments, questions, concerns, objections?
I have one comment. I agree with everything. I just would like to have the language or delegate added to those.
Yeah, I agree. That it's clear that it can be delegated by the vice president.
Put that at the top.
With the exception of chairing one committee, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, no, that.
Yeah. So what he's saying put that in the top. So what I think that we can do is from A, B, C, and D, chairperson shall be responsible for the following or delegating, vice chairperson shall be responsible for the following or delegating, and I'll put that through all 4 of them so that all of these things can be delegated accordingly at the, decision of the person in that seat. Besides that, any other comments, questions, concerns, objections?
Anyone?
Okay, great. The secretary, We recommended, and this was again per some of Ivan's suggestions, posting all board minutes on the website, both draft and final versions, including distributing, which I believe we have distributing the minutes of each meeting, both draft and final, and so we wanted to make it more specific and also state they had to post them on the website. Keeping records of minutes from all meetings, as in, Ivan's point was if it's all on the website, no one has to keep records of it, but our point was someone has to be responsible for knowing where they are, keeping a record of it, which is why it would be the secretary, yes.
It should be for the board minutes. The
Yes.
board meeting, not for the, but should say board, not.
Okay,
The committee chair should each be responsible for their own minutes.
correct.
Yes.
That should, the secretary should have to do that.
And then we also, Ivan's suggestion, making the secretary the official officer of service for the board, so if ever the board does get legally served, they would go to the secretary. That was it. Comments, questions? Yeah.
Just one comment. I think all the ideas for the secretary are great. I'm just concerned that when they're in the bylaws, for some reason, one of these, withdraw didn't post on time or whatever, then we could get a grievance from someone. So I'm just concerned about giving us so many rules.
But that's why there's or delegate,
That,
or delegate.
right, but we all know that very often these things don't get done or don't.
But someone has to be responsible for it, which is why the secretary is responsible, but if they aren't able to do it, then they can delegate it and say, whoever it is,
Right, I'm just saying, I agree that all these things should be done, but we all know it's very difficult to get them done and to get them delegated, and putting it in the bylaws saying, this is done, makes it so that if it's not done, somebody can then file a grievance against us, which we have gotten.
Okay, so to address that, one of the things I try to philosophically get the committee to do is, you want to keep raising your bar. You don't want to be going, well, who are we going to get to do it if they not put it in? You want to put it in and then move towards it. You understand what I'm saying? So because anything can be delegated, the secretary, you can hire somebody from Apple One to take your minutes. The secretary isn't doing, you can hire someone from Apple One to keep your books. All the treasurer has to do is fill out the statement once a month and give it to the board. Okay, so anything can be done. If you want to keep moving towards being better functional, this is where you have to go. Not be afraid. You know what? If you don't do it and someone grieves you, you go, we're sorry, we tried, we'll do better next time. You're not going to get decertified because you didn't post minutes 1 month. You know what I'm saying? Go, oops. And figure out a way to fix it. Keep moving up. No? Yes, sir.
No, I understand Jennifer's concerns as well, but I think, we do have to aim for doing more rather than just giving up on them, although I understand, obviously, these things get convoluted by things that are unimportant. Does anyone have anything else to add to the secretary issues? Anyone? You want to?
Okay, and then you guys will see we have also down there that they're taking the minutes and we're making it minutes, not transcription. They're recording either audio or video each of the meetings, and then, as I mentioned previously, distributing the minutes after each meeting. Okay, great.
You know what? Instead of saying taking minutes, it should be seen responsible to make sure that minutes are taken.
Well, but we're gonna remember, we're gonna add or delegating, so they can delegate it out if they're not taking them.
Okay, because that's very specific.
Okay,
What if we're no longer taking minutes, we're just doing recordings or broadcasts?
right.
But you have to make, are you uploading them to your website?
Want the minutes?
Well, that the intention is, yes, eventually to post them.
So yeah, you've got to let the stakeholders know what you did, and you want to know what you did. Next year, you're gonna, what did we do with that? If you don't have minutes, you're in trouble,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. Okay.
Okay. All right, so then that was secretary, and then treasurer, I don't think we really changed it too much, we just clarified the language and kept it the same.
And all of this can be
You should add in, will present a monthly financial report.
That comes later in the treasurer section, we talked about that before.
Okay.
Under the
Under
article,
the financial.
Article 9, yeah.
Okay, all right.
So we have to add the word monthly, but Article 9 has that point.
Okay.
Okay, great, so then I guess we're going to make a motion to approve the amendments, which would then keep article, or section 2 reading as follows. Chairperson shall be responsible for the following or delegating, preside at all council meetings and ensure the meeting stays on time and topic, setting the agenda for the board meeting, delegating additional duties to board members, keeping board members informed of all relevant information received, being the ex-official member of all committees, and the official spokesperson for the council, The vice chairperson shall be responsible for the following or delegating, serving in the place of the chair in their absence, collecting relevant information for future meeting agenda items and relaying it to the chairperson, monitoring the time during the meeting, chairing one committee of their choice, being the official representative of the council to all other neighborhood councils, alliances, or delegating the authority, and overseeing all committees are operating as necessary. The secretary shall be responsible for taking minutes or delegating, taking minutes of the meeting. Minutes shall include motions and votes, but shall not be a transcription. Keeping records of all the minutes from all of the meetings and posting them, both draft and final, to the website. Ensuring that the meeting is recorded either via audio or video, and distributing the minutes of each meeting after the meeting, which will basically involve the email blast and posting it to the website. Did I miss anything?
Ordinance.
Oh, and they will also be the official officer of service for the board.
Okay, do I have a motion? Okay, Jennifer's made the motion to amend according to the language as outlined by Lee. Is there a second?
No.
Okay, Lucas made a second. Are you ready, Joe? Yeah, okay, so are there any no's? Okay, any abstains? Jose, any other abstains? Okay, one abstain. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, one abstain. Yes, yes.
Mr. Chair, I have to go to one of my other neighborhood councils doing their bylaws, and they put me at the end of the agenda so I can get out there. Can I ask if there are any other questions that people have, any of the other sections specifically that I can help you with?
Our bylaws talk about chairs of committees,
Yeah.
but we find that there's so much responsibility and it's helpful to have co-chairs. Do we need to put that language into our bylaws?
You want to have a chair. Okay. You can then have as many co-chairs as you want, and they can have whatever duties the chair.
But by co-chairs, you mean like vice chair, not,
Yeah, they
not
become
same
vice-
level
yeah.
as the chair, but one
That's
more
right.
below the chair.
Because you don't want to have multiple people responsible for, where are your minutes? Oh, they did it. Oh, no, they did it. Well, they were supposed to post. No, you were supposed to. You want to have one person who's responsible.
So do we have to put that in our bylaws that we have
No.
co-chairs or vice chairs, or?
It's
That's
not
up.
necessary.
Generally speaking, the board creates the committees, one way or another. Okay. I don't remember how the chairs are picked. Basically, standing committee chairs should probably be board members. Ad hoc committee chairs can be anybody. If someone comes up with an idea and go, great, ad hoc committee, go do it. You know what I mean? Doesn't have to be a board member. And once that's done, they should really pick their teams.
We thoroughly discussed committees, and that's actually the next section.
But I'm
Yeah.
gonna have to go.
The
So-
one thing that I would say, Ivan, if you want to do a little explanation regarding an executive committee, that's one thing
Oh,
that
all right.
as the bylaws committee, we are recommending we should add an executive committee. And this was per the suggestion of Ivan, so I'm going to let him kind of go into a little bit about what that is and what that means.
And I understand it's more work, means an extra meeting a month. Again, I'm trying to raise your bar. And what the executive committee basically does is they help prepare your agenda. That's their basic function, okay? It shouldn't all be one person. Oh, I want this on the agenda. He wouldn't put it on the agenda. No, now it goes to a committee. The committee decides what goes on the agenda. The committee should not discuss the merits of any of these items that come in. It should just be, is the paperwork here? Do we have the document on that? Did you get this done? Is that done? Okay, this is ready to go, boom. That way you don't have the board meeting, have people going, where's the paperwork? You know, are there plans? Are there what, okay? So that's what your committee basically does. If it's ready to go, goes on the agenda, let the board decide what it is. Bill's a nice guy, the next person you have might be a dictator. And I guarantee you they're out there. I don't know if you've ever had that problem here, but they're out there. Where they say, no, I'm gonna, you know, we have one guy in the valley goes, I'm from the Bronx and it's gonna be what I want. And everybody's fighting him. So, I recommend you have that committee. It should consist of at least your board officers, the 4 officers. And if you want to have a couple of other people on there that are in offices that the board selects to go against the rule of balance, okay? However you want to handle that. But, okay, that's my recommendation. And again, it protects the chair in a way. If you do that, there should be a clause underneath that says, if for whatever reason the committee cannot meet, then the chair may unilaterally create the agenda. So you have an out.
You would need that caveat to make sure it's.
Right, or else you don't have, you can't have a board meeting. Okay, so that gives you, you know, the chair the right to be able to do that. And also, there are sometimes the things that would come in after that meeting, and if something comes in that's important, you would want to add it to the agenda without having to have another. So the chair has the authority to do that. I believe in giving the chair a lot of authority with check and balance. So he's doing great, nobody cares. If he starts messing up, you can remove him. And somewhere in the back of his head, he's got that. Okay? Otherwise, you're going to be sitting here debating, should we, you know? You want to be active and vital. Okay?
One other thing, if you just want to go to a little bit parliamentary authority, if you're talking
Oh,
about.
all right. Parliamentary authority just means what process you're going to use for conducting your meetings. The standard is Robert's Rules of Order. There's another thing called Rosenberg's Rules of Order, which is basically Robert's light, you know? If you do that, though, if you use Rosenberg, you have to say, however, anything that's not covered by Rosenberg, we will refer to Roberts. Because Rosenberg is about 3 pages, and Roberts is a book like that. You know what I'm saying? So that's probably your parliamentary authority. The idea of a parliamentarian, I'm going to do a training here. What's the role of a parliamentarian? Anyone want to tell me?
Tell us how, you know, to make sure we're following the rules, to make sure we're following the rules of procedure properly?
No.
No. Okay.
Anyone else?
Just go ahead and tell them.
Okay, all right. Parliamentarian is an advisor to the president on procedure. Okay? You work for the president. The president has the final say. So the parliamentarian can't sit and go, no, you guys are doing this wrong. The president, well, no, I'm the parliamentarian. You're doing it wrong. Doesn't happen. The president has the final say. So I'd say, I think you're doing this wrong. Oh, yeah, all right. Okay, I think this is how, okay, that's how it should work. The parliamentarian can work also for the board if you have questions. You understand that you can ask the chair, can you ask the parliamentarian for an opinion? But it should be appointed by the chair because it's an advisor and you want the chair to pick somebody that they feel they can work with. If I'm parliamentarian and the chair is just going wild and doing, I'm sitting there going, you know, I'm out of here. You know, I can't do my job. So that's why you don't want the board to appoint somebody to sit on the president. You want the president to have an advisor. Okay. All right?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good luck. See you soon. Hopefully, CPC will be coming.
Please.
Okay.
We appreciate
One last thing.
Yes.
We appreciate both of you and
Okay.
Jay coming to proceedings.
If you haven't seen it yet, we have a Congress once a year. The Congress this year is the 26th of September. It's at City Hall. It's a whole day of neighborhood council. The mayor comes down and talks to us. We take over the city hall, they have workshops and all kinds of events, networking, everything going on. Please put it on your calendars. It's free. You get your breakfast, lunch.
When is it?
The 26th of September.
Oh,
Right now, though, I'm in charge of workshops for the Insurance Committee, the Insurance Congress. I have to put together about 35 workshops. There's a survey that went out, hopefully you've seen it. What would you like to see at the Congress? It should have come out about a week and a half ago. If you have it, or if you've seen it, send it to everybody. The deadline is tomorrow.
Yeah.
It has to be in tomorrow. Please, if you have ideas and things you want.
okay. Thank you, Ivan.
Okay, bye.
Thanks, Ed.
Get parking next time.
Haha. Okay, so, on to committees. You guys heard what he said about the executive committee. As a bylaws committee, we suggested that we think that we should go ahead and add an executive committee. We also adjusted the quorum for standing committees, which you will see in there. We changed it from what it was previously to quorum for standing committee shall be 3 or 50% plus one of the number of committee members, whichever is greater. Previously, quorum was just 3. And we thought for a committee with 4 people, 3 should be fine, although it's kind of a lot because that's 75% of your people. But for example, if you have a committee of 10 and you only need 3 people to do a meeting, you could very substantially sway what the committee is really doing based on the fact that 70% of the committee isn't even required to show up for committee to do things. So we thought that having either or the greater would be a more effective and appropriate quorum for standing committee. We also are suggesting, per Ivan's suggestion, to change the name from the Bylaws and Election Committee to the Bylaws, Selection, and Election Committee, because after the election, every time someone is appointed to the board, they have to come to our committee first, but we're no longer electing them, we're really selecting them. So it's clerical per se, but it's actually changing the name of the committee, so it's definitely something the board should be aware of. And chime in on if you have any comments. There's a bunch of clerical changes in there because I had to define committee members, etc., so that's what a lot of that language is. It used to read, may include any interested stakeholders. We changed any to all because we just thought it was a more appropriate word, that it conveyed the message more correctly. We put ad hoc committee shall be comprised of a minimum of 1 and no more than 5 board members. We thought that even if it's an ad hoc committee and even if it's a community-related thing, that one person from the board should be involved in it, because that way we have one person accountable to the board who can report back to what's going on. We recommended adding a term limit, so an ad hoc committee shall exist for no more than 1 year or until the next board is seated. That way, ad hoc committees kind of expire at a point in time, but at the same time, 1 year should be sufficient for the purpose of any ad hoc committee created. We suggested adding on item C, all committee chairs shall be, right now it says shall be appointed by the board. We suggested changing that to all committee chairs shall be appointed by a majority vote of the board. So not really a major change, more of just something that clarifies the language that we believe is already there. We specifically decided that committee chairs should not need to be board members. Ivan does suggest that standing committee chairs should be board members, but as a bylaws committee, after discussing, we don't believe that committee chairs need to be board members. The board is ultimately going to have to approve them, so if a non-board member wants to be a committee chair, the board is going to have the ability to say, no, we don't think you're qualified. We added the language similar to the board meeting that committees shall take minutes, but the minutes shall not be transcriptions. And then the major change that we made that I think that you guys are going to want to really discuss is the following under item B. We added language in regards to a board meeting which has 6 or more board members that states, The meeting shall be conducted only as a committee meeting, and all items that need full board approval must be properly agendized and action taken at the next regular board meeting. The purpose of the joint notice shall solely be to notify stakeholders that a quorum of board members may be present at the committee meeting. So we just very clearly identified what the purpose of the joint meeting is and what the purpose of the joint notice is, as opposed to the language before, which was relatively vague. Does anyone have any comments, questions, suggestions, or objections?
I think that has to be, yeah, I think that's gonna be
All
fine.
right, Don.
You've done good work.
Thanks.
Again, I'm a little new to this, but what I'm reading here is under B, committee structure, no more than 5 board members.
Correct.
And in our, if I'm not mistaken, our plum committee currently includes 7.
Yeah.
The bylaws have always stated minimum of 3, maximum of 5 on standing committees. We did not change that.
Okay, but does
It
that
means
mean
it always
that-
has to be a joint meeting between both.
No, the bylaws have specifically stated previously, we did not change that a committee, standing committee may not have more than 5 board members, not that it can always just be noticed as a board meeting.
And if it's over, it's always a joint.
No, the bylaws or any committee of the HSDNC is not allowed to have more than 5 board members as committee members. As many board members as shall choose may go to any meeting. However, the committee cannot have more than 5 board members on the committee. And this is our bylaws, and this is what it's always stated.
That's what I'm saying, that's always been stated, and if there are more than 5, it always has to be.
No, there's not allowed,
I know, but I'm not saying the members of the committee, I'm saying at a meeting.
correct, which is that language that I just pointed.
Members at a meeting.
And yes, that's correct. And so we added a very specific language that if the committee is expecting 6 or more, you have to agendize it appropriately. But to your point, Plum can only have 5 board members.
Yes, all of them can only have.
Right, all of them can only have 5.
Okay, how do we get from 7?
2 people resign,
2 people have to resign.
Okay.
Because we,
either from the board or from the committee, preferably the committee.
yeah, the committee preferably don't resign to the board. Leave.
One or the other.
We had this issue at our last board meeting. We had too many people on the outreach committee, so we re-voted on who would be on the outreach committee, subtracted a couple people, so we'll have to do that with the plum committee the next meeting.
It has to be made at the board level, that's the thing. And yes, only 5.
Board members.
Yeah.
5 board
Yeah,
members.
5 board members on any committee is all we're ever allowed. That's consistent with the past, that's what we're keeping now, it's not going to change.
The only exception is you take
Some of the board members.
Yeah, the only exception committee that the chair can be an ex officio, aside from that, there's no others. Does everybody know that? Okay.
Some of the people on the plum committee don't show up regularly.
Well, that
Maybe
is,
those people
yeah, that
would
is,
be willing to step down.
that will be addressed at the next board meeting. Thank you, Sam.
So then, the executive committee is the question that you guys need to decide on. Do you want to create an executive committee or not? As bylaws, we're suggesting it, but it's not reflected anywhere on this paper. So if you're going to try and read about what we have suggested, we don't have specific language, but if the board wants to create that committee, it can be done right now.
I think it's a decent idea as long as it has that provision or caveat that allows for, if the committee doesn't meet, that the chair can set up the agenda, because if not, we're going to miss meetings. Because it takes a meeting to have a meeting.
This is a discussion between you guys.
I'm just saying, does everybody understand the concerns here?
I think it's a good idea to have an executive committee, because we can talk about administrative things, with the chair, vice chair, secretary, treasurer. It could also include maybe 1 or 2 board members, or it could also include 1 or 2 community members who are not on the board. And that way you can also kind of say, okay, you know what? Last meeting we postponed these items need to be first on the agenda, or if let's say if there's a reconsideration that comes up first, not at the end of the meeting or whatnot. So,
Well, the caveat is they can't be judged, they have to.
no, not judge, not judging the item, we're saying how we're laying out the agenda
Right,
items.
based on the available time, what needs to be covered, old business, etc.
3 or 4, they are functioning.
Well, it is, the key word I think is functioning. It has to be functioning, otherwise it's just one more
So
committee.
yes, we want to hang out and tie here now, president, I'm the chair of the executive, just because of that, we don't need that. We need something to function like we are doing right now.
So yeah, the question is it productive? I think we need a consensus on this, so,
For example.
well, yeah, is there a consensus that people feel we should have an executive committee, understanding what it does? And
Just a question with the executive committee, which if you have it, it sounds like to me it's going to be 4, 5, 6 people. Do they still have to go through all the notification
yes,
procedures?
every committee has to be around that for compliant.
That's another question right there. You fill about the picker card?
Yeah, that's
You do it for a specific point, right?
No, you can,
Public comment.
actually, you can speak and then do the vote. We can't force people to vote. That's what we ask for. There's a caveat that we can't actually force people to sign in. We can't force people to identify themselves. We can't actually force them. I know.
Do you want to take a straw vote on whether or not people
Yeah,
want an
let's-
executive committee, and that way we can
Let's
vote
take a
from there?
straw vote before we make a
No,
motion.
you can't make a straw vote.
Well, I think we can because we're not making a motion to use it because it's going to be part of the whole. We're going to vote on the entire thing.
You can't get like an opinion related to whether or not this is worth discussing?
You can't do a straw vote. You make a motion and then you vote, because the straw vote does count as a vote, and you're voting without a
Only
motion.
if a motion has been made.
Well, then why doesn't someone make a motion to add an executive committee?
I'll
And
make a
then,
motion to create executive committee.
Is there a
You
second?
can't do that because it is not in the agenda.
yes, we can, and yes, it
What
is.
is it?
Yes, yeah, it's part of the bylaw.
Item 2, or it's the second bullet point. I don't have an agenda in front of me, but
Okay,
Roll.
so Gerard made the motion, Christian second.
it's item 5B.
I'm letting-
Okay, so there was a motion and a
There's motion
second.
and a second. So,
And also, it'll be composed of officers, correct?
Well, I think right now we're just trying to see if people want to actually create an executive committee, and if they do, then we can formulate the language, no?
Nothing here on the agenda to create a executive committee.
It specifically says discussion and possible action to vote on any other changes to the HSDNC bylaws suggested during the meeting. This is a change suggested during the meeting. It qualifies under item 5B. Carry on.
this is correct, because it's public, that allows the changes to be made as we go in this meeting.
But we cannot vote that like that, Bill. How can you vote if I came here to promise you something? You're going to say, yeah. You don't know what I'm going to promise. What I'm going to
Well, the whole thing is.
If it's done, it's all going to be discussed and created right now. I don't have some pre-approved language I'm going to pass out.
You have to say that we need to create an executive committee.
No, the language is fine how it is, Jose.
Let's do this, we'll make a motion, if Doug says that it's not eligible, then it's not eligible. That will be the final arbiter on this.
We already broke it.
Doug has to approve all the
Right.
amendments.
Yeah, Doug has to approve it
What
anyway.
happens After we go through this, Doug will have to approve it.
I
We
know.
submit it, so if that's an issue we can bring up. And if people do want the committee, we don't want it, we can bring it up. But we're not even sure that's gonna happen. But I understand where you're coming from, but Doug is final arbiter. And the problem is,
No, there's
we're trying to, I know, the thing is, we're trying to just, because we have more to go through, I get where you're coming from, I do, but, okay, we've had a motion, we've had a second, are there any no's?
No.
Okay, 2 no's, any others? Okay, are there any abstains? I abstain.
Oh, well, no, I need, okay, so it's Jose and Efren are no's.
Yes,
Bill, you abstain.
Luke abstains.
You
Aaron
abstain.
abstains.
Aaron abstains.
Any other abstentions or no's? Okay, all others in favor say aye.
Aye.
What's your count?
Should be, yeah, 6 and 5.
Hold on, let me,
I just wanted to officially state.
okay.
So then now I guess we would discuss the language that would be reflective under the executive committee section?
Yes.
Okay, so going in line with what Ivan said, the purpose of the executive committee would be to set the agenda for the board meeting. So,
Clear the paperwork, no merit talks.
I just want to go back. Really, quite frankly, in our committee section, we don't have a lot of language about what any of our committees are supposed to do. All we have is them named, and then I guess the default is
The
you just.
problem with this is we give you the caveat that if the committee can't meet.
Sure, so we so my question would be, to follow in line with the way we've done it for every other committee, we can add them to the committees as the standing committee. And then under the section 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever, we can add a provision in the appropriate place that states that if the executive committee is unable to meet or fails to obtain quorum, then the chair has the discretion to set the agenda for the next board meeting, and then follow it up with, and if after the executive committee sets the agenda for the meeting, the chair needs to add or chooses to add an additional item to the agenda, the chair has the authority to do that. Basically.
Yes.
Okay, let me write that down.
Because, yeah, the meetings have to move forward with the agenda. We're never having
I'm going to, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to add this language as section 3, item B, and move everything else down accordingly. Does everyone understand that?
Say that again.
I'm going to add this language to section 3, item B, and it's going to be its own new bullet point, so committee structure and everything else will just move one bullet point down accordingly.
Okay.
Does everybody understand?
Yes.
Everybody
Okay.
have that? Okay. Next.
Let me just write this down so I have the correct language so I can use it for the motion.
Alita, how much more time? Because I know that Jose and may have to leave.
You said 9 o'clock, right?
Yeah,
I'm trying to get it out by 9.
just making sure. Thank you.
Okay, so then I guess the motion would be that we're going to add in Article 7, Section 3, bullet point B, a new bullet point, moving everything else down accordingly. If the executive committee fails to meet or obtain quorum, then the chair has the authority to set the agenda for the next board meeting. Also, if after the executive committee meets, also after the executive committee meets, the chair has the authority to add additional items to the agenda as needed.
Okay.
Motion, seconds, I can't make a motion, I'm not on the board.
Anyone want to make, Efren stepped out. Does anyone want to make a motion? Jen made the motion.
We can get that from back there, so we can do a motion.
Well, the thing is, if we still have quorum, because we still have the meeting, he is,
Well, if we're voting on everything,
okay,
he
so,
needs to be present to hear the motion. Otherwise, he doesn't know what to vote for.
well, the thing is, you could go without him, and he's, we can't vote with two people, said that.
Right.
She's grabbing it.
Oh,
Maybe we can, the
Okay,
consensus.
it's coming back. Are you okay? Okay, so, Jennifer, you made the motion, Robert, did you hear the motion was for?
The motion is for Article 7, Section 3, bullet point B, to add a new bullet point in that location which says that if the executive committee fails to meet or obtain quorum, the chair has the authority to set the agenda for the next board meeting. If after the executive committee meets, the chair has the authority to add additional items to the agenda as necessary.
So essentially, if the executive committee doesn't meet, then the chair can take the authority to.
Yeah, so that we can always have a regular meeting.
Correct. Or if the executive committee meets and then there's not quorum, the chair can still do it. And then, like Ivan said, if something comes up between the executive committee meeting and the board meeting that ends up being a very essential item, the chair also has the authority to add that.
Okay, that is, that needs, otherwise we'll do one function.
So that's what the-
Jennifer made the motion, you seconded it? Was it Luke? You seconded?
No, Luke did.
Okay, Luke seconded.
He's up there, he's sitting.
Okay, so, are there any no's? Okay, any other no's?
Abstain.
Okay, any other abstention? Okay, there was,
To do that, so,
Okay.
when you're voting, please vote one at a time. So I guess I'm not.
okay, so I'll ask the no's first. Jose, no? Any other no's? Abstentions? Different? Are there any other abstentions? All abstain, so there's two.
You abstaining, Bill?
Yes. Would you like to vote on this? Yeah. Okay, everyone else in favor say aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it.
Do we need to make another separate motion to just approve the clerical changes for that section, or we're good?
I think that was included, wasn't it?
No, all we talked about was that one specific addition to the executive committee. That's what that whole motion was all about, was the executive committee.
Okay,
Since that was like a brand new.
so what would you want, when you ask?
Well, we had discussed adding a term limit for ad hoc committees of 1 year or until the next board is seated. And we had discussed all committee chairs shall be appointed by a majority vote of the board. Those are two things that are not present in the draft of the bylaws that you guys are looking at, that we as a bylaws committee suggested also adding. Yes, Jennifer?
I'm concerned about saying it has to be, the committees have to be,
Only ad hoc committees.
oh.
Yeah, not the regular standing committee.
Yeah, standing committees don't go anywhere, but if you form an ad hoc committee, it has a time frame of 1 year, so it doesn't just carry on forever.
Yes,
So
I
I
think
think
it
we
has to
just
be
also say
regular.
committees, are appointed by a majority of the board.
No, committee chairs shall be appointed by, right now it says committee chair shall be appointed by the board. We're just recommending it to say all committee chairs shall be appointed by a majority vote of the board,
Yeah, that's much clearer.
as opposed to just by the board.
Oh, yeah, that was my question, because originally I think when we just said it 20 seconds ago,
Oh.
it was a majority of the board, and I'm just concerned because it's hard to get a majority of the board here.
Yeah, no, just the majority vote of the board, yeah.
Okay, I think that's a good idea. I think that is necessary to have clear, active language that makes sense. Anyone else have a topic?
Does anyone want to make a motion?
I can all make the motion. Is there a second?
Yes, second.
Christian, second. Are you ready? Are there any no's? Okay, are there any abstentions? Everybody in favor say aye. Aye. Passes unanimously. Next.
Okay, so the next thing we're talking about is meetings, and so prior to this, we pretty much only had clarification. I made a definition in here, a special meeting shall be a meeting which is not on the calendar established by the board at the first board meeting of the calendar year. And that language regarding the calendar established was previously in our bylaws. I didn't change or add that. So that's just one clarification that I made in defining the term special meeting separate from board meeting. But now that we just added an executive committee and the purpose of the executive committee shall be to set the agenda, we need to make an additional item under section 2 agenda setting, which I think we make it bullet point A, which states that the agendas shall be set by the executive committee. If the executive committee fails to set the agenda, then the following A, B, C, D, E shall be utilized for the chair to set the agenda. Does everyone follow me? Does anyone have any questions?
Well, I'll make the motion to add that.
Is everyone okay with what I just said?
Okay.
Okay.
Everybody get it?
And is everyone okay with the change? Because this language I added. This was not through bylaws, this was not suggested by Ivan. I defined special meeting as, a special meeting shall be a meeting which is not on the calendar established by the board at the first board meeting of the calendar year. And our bylaws previously specifically state a calendar of board meetings shall be established by the board at its first board meeting of each calendar year. So for all of you to understand, currently a regular board meeting is the second Monday of every month. So a special meeting would be any meeting that is not that.
Yeah, without being, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Can a committee,
A committee sets their own meetings.
okay, but that's.
This is board meeting specifically.
They can call a special meeting of their committee.
Yes.
Although we prefer a monthly meeting of everybody.
Oh, yeah.
Understanding.
Oh,
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I know we both got an email last week or something from the city attorney saying a special meeting is this specifically. Do you remember? So I would just suggest that our bylaws say exactly what the city attorney is saying. Have the same definition of a special meeting that the city.
Are you referencing the one that I forwarded to you and Bill?
Yeah, probably.
That was more so tied into if you're making a meeting on your same meeting date and time and calling it a special meeting, that's not okay. If it's a special meeting, it has to be changed from your standard meeting date and time, and they think they said by 45 minutes or something like that.
Or if you have an agenda that's been changed and then you do a 24-hour notice as a special meeting, well, it's 72 hours for the regular.
That would be a question for Dunn. The way they explained it to me, that's not correct. However,
That's the way they explain it to us unless they change.
So the way how city council does it, and I've seen that before,
Okay.
where they need to have a special meeting. So what they'll do is they'll say the meeting start time will be at 10:15, whereas the regular meeting time is at 10 o'clock. It'll say at 10:15, or as soon as the regular meeting is completed.
right, so they would basically hold a special meeting, which would happen right after their initial meeting. So their initial meeting starts on time, and then they have a special meeting right after with the
And that
adjusted.
special meeting does require a separate roll call and all that stuff.
You have to adjourn one meeting and start the other. The weird thing is they don't need the 24-hour notice on that.
No, they do.
Well, they can have,
No, they do.
okay, they've done things that are weird.
And why do I say they do? Because I get those emails 24 hours to via EMS.
So going back to Jennifer's point, we can add more language if you want to, but I defined it basically very specifically as a special meeting is any meeting that's not your standard board meeting. So without any, it has to be this much or that little or otherwise, it's just if it's not your standard board meeting, it's a special meeting. That way it says wide open as possible.
I assume if it doesn't conform, we'll hear from them regardless.
That's probably also true.
Yeah, so I would say we go along with that because it's going to be corrected by them whether we like it or not.
Okay, so then separately, the next one was what I just said, which is agendas for meetings shall be set by a process, and it shall be by the executive committee, and if the executive committee does not do it, then what I would do is make A, B, C, D, and E sub-items of that bullet point, and say that if the executive committee fails to set the meeting, then the chair shall set the meeting in the following manner, or set the agenda, sorry, in the following manner.
Okay. So, are we waiting for a motion?
No, I made one.
Sorry?
I made one basically.
Okay, right. Did anyone second?
I'll second.
Alex second? Are you comfortable with it?
I'm a little confused on what I didn't catch exactly what the motion was for.
It's for both.
section?
Well, first section one, item bullet point B,
Okay.
and that's where I added the language.
And it's, special meeting requirements or rules, I could say?
It's called B, just special meetings.
Okay.
Yeah, and then I added a sentence is what I actually did.
Got it. Okay. All right, so Christian made it, Alex seconded. No?
Okay, so are there any other